Alright, so when you come to putting your piston rings on, a few general rules of thumb. Obviously apart from, you know, like thicknesses. So like if the second ring is thicker than the top ring, it's obviously not going to go in the hole. Oops, shivers. So on some situations you'll find like little writing stamped on top right near the end. This one says N100. So as a general rule of thumb, the writing always faces up. You'll often find the top ring is a lot silvery in colour, a lot shinier than what the second compression ring is. Seems to be like a more of a carbon colour. That's another very common thing. So if you find, and sometimes you'll have rings with tapers on them, and then you'll have a look and you'll think, all right, so yep, taper faces up or down, whichever way it goes in the piston. And yeah, so that's, and same with your oil rings here. You always start at the bottom and work your way up. Alrighty, well, we've got the rings on, and I wanted to share with you my thoughts on ring spacing. There's a lot of thoughts and a lot of people's opinions, and I respect all of those. My thoughts on piston ring placement on pistons without locating pins is this. I like to go with the oil ring. We find our center axis so that piston, you know, pivots like that. One gap there, one gap there, one compression ring gap there, and another compression ring gap there. And I'll tell you why. The compression rings are always the furthest away from the center axis, which is the, you know, where your piston rocks like that. So the further away from the axis, the more pressure we get on that point and on that point right there. It's just the nature of how things are, and you've got to have clearance when it expands. So what happens if you've got, say, your rings, you know, opened up here like this? You're getting a lot of pressure on the end gap. So I like to have them one either side of the pin, because when it's moving, look at that, you've actually got an end gap close to the pivot point, and it hardly moves at all. Hardly at all. So I just do one over this side, one over that side. It doesn't really matter either way. With your oil rings, you can have them one this side or one that side, or just shunted to the side a little bit like that. That's fine as well. I always space them out 180 apart, so if it's kind of like there, the other one's going to be over here. Now, I know that you're going to say, oh yeah, but the rings will move. And they can move. And sometimes they don't. And that's just the nature of it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they stay locked in where you place them. And if that's the case, that's why you want to have no ends of the rings on your highest moving pivot point, which is right there. Try it. Alright. Alright, so we've got our ring compressor on. We've compressed our rings. We're now going to just tap this through. Let's use the back of a hammer. Nice little taps. Left, right, left, right, left, right. I can feel them just going in beautiful. Straight past that pre-made little taper that we did. Bang, there it is. Look at that. It's like as if we've done it before. Some things, when you don't have much of a taper there like what this has, because it's a very thin ball hanging at the relief here at the bottom, yeah, you can't get them in without a ring compressor. They're not there. So that being the case, yeah, we've got our piston and in the cylinder. It's ready to put in. Sometimes when you've got a lot of a lot of taper on the bottom of your cylinder, you don't you don't need a ring compressor. They'll just locate themselves, and that's fine. You see that a lot on two-strokes actually. So that's something to remember. So we just tap it out here now till we get to the point where we're able to get our pin in. Now, plenty of lube. Where your pin goes, also a little bit on your small end bearing, because when you start it up, it takes a little while for that oil to get up to the top, and trust me, you don't want these parts running dry for the first 10-15 seconds. Yeah, so here we go. We're going to put the lid on, put the cylinder on. So I ask you right now, have you got everything clean? Everything's good to go? You're right, we signed off, we've got our gasket on, our new gasket. Alright, we've got to this point. Let's feed our cam chain through, new cam chain of course. Alright, let's see what happens here. We're pre-lubed. Yeah, nice. Alright, that's easy. So now it's time just to trim this other little clip off here, as I said before, and we'll put that on. Okay, so you've got your clip on, got our new gasket lined up. Let's just take it home. Make sure it doesn't pinch the gasket on the way through. Just find our locators there. Not too far away. There we go. Look at that. You can do that sitting up. You can do it on the side, whichever way is the most comfortable. There we go, look at that. There we go, people. There we go, that's one 325cc pallet sitting right up on top there. Look at that. Right. Everything looks good from around the sides. Your gasket's not sticking out. It means it went home nice. We'll move on to the next part, hey? Alright, head work. Well, this head has been ported. So, one of the rules of thumb, which all porters, performance people do, is your intake can't be too smooth. It has to be sort of a matte, in a colour, like a matte finish. Whereas your exhaust can be as smooth as you like, nice and flowing, no sharp edges. So why is the reason that our intake has to be kind of like a matte, rough finish? Well, what we've found is that fuel will bead. Instead of being a mist, it will actually bead, like turning out little balls, and bead up on the way in when it touches the really smooth lining of your intake port. Now, not so much at high RPM, definitely not at high RPM actually. It seems, I've noticed it a problem more so when you're at low idle, so you got low vacuum pressure, sucking the air and fuel mixture in. And I've actually worked on bikes where the owners have spent hours porting and polishing their intakes, only to find that they're almost untunable at a low RPM, because you just can't get that. You can't get that enough vacuum pressure to pull it through, and it beads up, and you get really yucky rough idle. As soon as you bring your RPM up a little bit, it seems to change, and in most cases will go back to normal. Anyway, so that's the reason for that. Now time for the new seals. If you don't have one of these little tools, it's probably not a bad idea, because in some cylinder heads like this one, it's a very, very deep little orifice where we've got to get in, and it certainly makes it easier, I can tell you that. Some heads it doesn't matter, of course. A little bit of oil. Get your guitar going. Alright, some people don't do this. I like to just have a little press on the blunt side. Right, so we're ready, we're spaced out here, we've got all of our cleaning done, as you can see. When you get your head back, or from your machine shop, or if you machine them yourselves, I always put my valves in order, as you can see, just there, as they come out of the head. Because the last thing I want to do is get them, like if one goes back here and one goes back here, I don't want to get them crossed up, because if there was any change in angle whatsoever, that, even if I don't know about it, during the cutting process, we may not get a good seal. It's just a little piece of advice there. You know, hopefully, obviously, nothing would happen during that process. A little bit of oil on your shaft. Oi, who said that? A little bit of oil on your shaft, and bang, in it goes. So, drop in your base. This is your base of your spring. Some motors, you've got to put that on first, because the hole is too small and your seal won't go over your seal. This motor, it doesn't matter. Okay, so just in case you were wondering. And get it located. Our spring, our top. Now, have you guys got one of these? If you don't, you need one. I don't know how you'd be able to do this without it. Valve spring compressor. They're not. You can even make one. They're not that. It's not a technical instrument. It's just makes things so much easier. And when I say easy, on a little motor like this, nothing's that easy. High voltage rock and roll, yeah boy. Oh, I've actually got the wrong head on. It's not going to go down. It's not going to go down deep enough, so I'm going to go smaller. That's fine. Change it out real quick to the smaller head. It wasn't going down into where the bucket goes over the top, so there we go, something to look out for. Alright, let's get some compression on it a little bit, and let's get these in. When you've got big fingers, it's always difficult. I found a set of these years ago. I believe they're called vascular clamps. So I don't know whether you get them on eBay. I don't know. I've had mine for years, and I don't know how I'd do this job without them, to be honest. Vascular clamps. Look at that. I guess you could use tweezers. Had it all. Okay, so when you get them, you're not going to be able to see this just with my camera gear, but when you get it located, you will find that these little locators pull up nice and tight into your retainer, and you end up with something that looks like that. And that's what we want. So I'm going to go and do all 4 of those now. Don't forget, a little bit of oil on your shaft. And let's get it done. So you've got all your valves in now. This is something that I like to do. Once you've got them all in place, I just get the back end of a screwdriver and just tap. It can just sort of help the retainers just sort of bed themselves in. When I say bed them, just get to where they need to be. Because what I've found is when you've got bucket and shim type setups, sometimes you get them shimmed up and they are where they want to be. You do a few rotations and the cams push them open and close. Next thing you know, you get a little bit of shift, and next thing you know, your tolerances are all gone, and you got to re-shim it. And on some, that's a pain in the backside. So that's just something I do, and it seems to sort of, I don't seem to have any trouble, so it seems to work. So yeah. Well, it's time to put the lid on. The gasket on. Got our cam chain guides in. Head's been done. It's all looking nice. Alright, so let's do it. There's a couple of ways to do it. Actually, I'll show you a way that I actually like doing it. Get a little piece of wire. Get him on your cam chain, just close it up there a little bit. And you just feed the wire in like that, and you get your big clumsy man hands and just make it work. So the gasket's still sitting on the locating dowels, all nice. Looks like it. Yeah, so it's all feeling pretty good. You can stick that bit of wire then through one of your front engine mount holes just to hold him on. Alright, so we've got our lid on, it's not tensioned down or anything yet. Next thing I want to talk about are your bolts. Clean threads. Now you see the different colours here, we've got some black ones and we've got some silver nickel coloured ones. Well, obviously these two here go on the outside and they're exposed to the elements, so it's very important that we put a little bit of anti-seize on those. Doesn't hurt on the inside as well. I like to run it on both, and I'll tell you the reason I like to run it on both is because when you're tensioning them up, you've got the same amount of slippery or viscosity on each of your bolt, on each of your threads. So therefore, in theory, you should have the same, your tension wrench has got an even playing ground, you know what I mean? Like it'll click off on the exact same spot, hopefully, if the threads are all good. So you don't need much, it just, you know, it winds itself in. And on these little fellas as well. It's easier to strip a little fella than what it is to strip a big one. And on the TTRs, of course, you've got a little one just under there and under the front there as well. Yep, fits all over your fingers, that anti-seize, but works wonders. Alrighty, so I always put the your little nuts on first. So we'll go ahead and we'll drop our nuts and our bolts in, and we'll get them torqued down to spec, and we'll move on to the next bit.